avid How to Train Your Dragon fans might already know that the individual names of the Nightlights, the children of the Light Fury and Toothless, have been revealed. Except, here's the thing. Those are not their names. Hey y'all, I'm the Geek Apprentice, and it feels so good to be wearing my How to Train Your Dragon video outfit again. It's been a while. Yeah, I did record and upload my reaction and review of How to Train Your Dragon Homecoming back in December, but I haven't done like an actual discussion or theory video in a pretty long time, so I'm excited. Alright, so you might be aware that it came out recently that there are names for the Nightlights: Rough Runner, Pouncer, and Dart. These were given in a phone app game called Dragon's Rise of Berk. The problem is, like I said, those aren't their names, at least they're not canon. And I'm going to explain why, but first I want to clarify that if you like the names and you want to call them that, then okay, by all means, go for it. I'm just making this video to help people understand why it can't be considered official dragon lore. That's all. I mean, I gave my Funko Pop figures their own names: Moondancer, Starburst, and Firefly. And actually, I think the genders I gave line up with the ones given for these, quote, names. The two green-eyed ones being boys, and the blue-eyed one being a girl. My point is, sure, call them whatever you want, but don't call it canon, because it's not, and here's why. If we're going to claim something as a part of the official How to Train Your Dragon lore, then it needs to be a part of the official canon works, right? So, what is a part of the official line of canon? The 3 films. Obviously. The 2 or 3 series, depending on how you look at it. Defenders/Riders of Berk, which that's why I said it depends on how you look at it, whether that's 1 or 2. And then the Netflix series Dragon's Race to the Edge. The 5.5 shorts: Homecoming, Dawn of the Dragon Racers, Gift of the Night Fury, Book of Dragons, Bone Napper Dragon, and some weird extra about bobsledding. And finally, something few people know about, which are the 2 comics written by Dean DeBlois himself, which take place between the 2nd and 3rd film. These are iffy though, since they're not like produced by DreamWorks, if you will, so maybe we can just say they can be considered canon, but may not actually be so. Notice what's not on that list? The games, and there were multiple games. So why aren't the games considered canon? Well, there's a myriad of reasons. For one thing, they're not even in the same line of media, they're interactive forms of media. I mean, there are games for a plethora of different film franchises, but we don't consider any of them part of the official lore. Yes, some we do, but it varies. What about the 2 comics I mentioned then? Because those are not the same form of media. That's a minor exception since they are written by Dean DeBlois, who is the director, co-producer, and writer of the trilogy, the movie trilogy. But like I said, that's kind of iffy, and I would be totally fine with throwing that out of the line of canon because they're cute, but they don't add much anyway. Another huge reason why the games, but more specifically Rise of Berk, is not canon is because it has both Valka and Stoic in it at the same time. And we know from the 2nd film that they unfortunately were not reunited for even an entire day. This detail automatically throws out any, quote, new info that the game supposedly provides. Not to mention, Valka wasn't even in Homecoming. She wasn't even alluded to or mentioned at all, which was kind of frustrating. But that means that maybe she passed on before the Nightlights were even a thing. Yes, I know I've mentioned before that there might be a small continuity-ish mistake in Riders of Berk concerning Valka, but I'm more willing to look over that. 1, because I think there might be an explanation, I'm still looking into it, and 2, I'm lenient because, well, it was produced by DreamWorks, so it can be a little bit more overlooked. There's a big difference between DreamWorks and a phone game. But you might be asking, what if the creators of How to Train Your Dragon confirm that these are their official names? I used to use this justification myself once upon a time, and I may have even used it recently, in which case I might need to look into that and renege. But unfortunately, this just can't be used as a case for solidity. The biggest example of why is J.K. Rowling. Authors, series creators, what have you, they spew out random info all the time. They retcon, they fan please, they make up random junk, and you honestly can't take any of it seriously. If it's not put down in hard ink via the medium by which the original story was told, then we can't trust it. I love Pottermore.com, but even that's kind of iffy. I mean, I'm not sure if we can really trust that as wholly 100% lore. I want to, and it's so fun to treat it as such, but I know some of you are thinking this, don't get me too far into it, but yes, Fantastic Beasts does meet the criteria for lore, in my opinion. Just moving on. A big example of this outside of J.K. Rowling actually is a spoiler for Frozen 2, so skip to this time if you don't want to be spoiled. A long time ago, one of the creators of Frozen confirmed that really ridiculous theory about Tarzan and the Little Mermaid. It was so dumb, I don't know why they confirmed it, but they did anyway. And yet, in Frozen 2, we know for a fact that it was debunked because we find not only the ship, we watch how Anna and Elsa's parents die. That was really hard to watch. And we also know where the ship was going, so that debunks the Tangled theory as well. So you see, even if everyone who ever worked on How to Train Your Dragon said, yes, that's definitely their names, we can't take it seriously. Or at least, I won't. Honestly, this is all way more than enough reason to see why this is not their actual names. It is not part of How to Train Your Dragon lore. To recap, the games are not canon. More specifically, Rise of Berk can never be considered canon for the reasons I mentioned, and we can't take any of the series creators' words as gospel. Now you might be wondering, what if they made another short down the line and those names were used? Okay, fair enough. That would make them canon. Just like how even though I did kind of accept the names Zephyr and Nothing based on Cressa's word way too quickly, they only became official because of Homecoming. However, that brings me to another point. Why the Nightlights should not even get individual names, period. First, and let me say this real quick, there shouldn't even be any more dragon content at this point. Homecoming is case in point. It was okay, but I won't go into it here. You can watch my review and reaction and everything another time. The thing is, Hidden World closed out the series so beautifully and perfectly, and to add on after that, which it would have to be after that to include the Nightlights, would be really messy and kind of just ruin the message and theme of the third film and pretty much the whole trilogy, actually. Yes, I know Homecoming was before the epilogue, but you see my point. So they shouldn't even be making more content that involves the Nightlights anyway. But moving on, hypothetically speaking, why do I think the Nightlights shouldn't have their own names? Same reason the Light Fury doesn't have a name. She has her species name, if you will, sure, but no pet name. Why? Because she's not a pet. Yes, I know Toothless and some of the other dragons weren't just pets, they were more like friends, best friends, partners, but still. But the Light Fury not having her own individual nickname is symbolic for what she represents to Toothless and the whole theming behind the third film. Toothless needs to be on his own, as does Hiccup. Hiccup needs to learn how to be a leader without relying so heavily on Toothless, or at the very least not just on his own, but with the correct partner, Astrid. Letting go of Toothless is a metaphor for Hiccup growing up and letting go of his childish ways. They're still best friends, but from afar, just like the end credit song says. And since they're still best friends, but from a distance, that's also symbolic of how we still have a little bit of childlike attitudes within us that come out every now and again. So they're still best friends. He still has the child part inside of him, but they're not so heavily relying on each other because Hiccup had to grow up and mature. Again, I'm not saying you have to leave your best friend in order to be an adult. I'm saying it's symbolic. It's a metaphor. Still breaks my heart, but I am so proud of DreamWorks for taking this film and this series the right direction to complete Hiccup's character arc. Anyway, the Light Fury, for lack of a better word, doesn't belong to anyone. She belongs to the Hidden World, with wild dragons. Subsequently, any offspring between Toothless and the Light Fury are also wild dragons. And I don't mean wild to be synonymous with non-domesticated, just that they have their own world apart from the humans. To give them nicknames is kind of an insult. It begins the process of them becoming pets, more or less, or becoming super reliant on them again, and you don't want to start down that path. Again, I know that our main beloved dragons were more like friends and partners, but I hope you see what I'm getting at here. Giving them a species name for scientific purposes? Sure, great, that's why they're called the Nightlights. I just don't think it's a good idea to take the extra step to give them individual names. I gave my Funko Pops individual names, but that's just the figurines. I'm not talking about the actual creatures themselves. Like the Light Fury, they should remain nameless, if you will, so as to keep that healthy separation between the humans and dragons. The best way to keep the dragons safe, as well as to continue the progress of the humans without relying on the dragons in a very healthy way, as was properly and wonderfully and beautifully pointed out and shown in the final film. Everyone seems to keep trying to come up with different ways to bring the Nightlights back, bring up more dragon content involving the Nightlights, and Zephyr and Nothing can seem to be completely missing the point of the final film. I know I've hammered out the logic so many times in other videos, but for those who haven't seen them, at this point, people who want the dragons to come back and more stuff between Zephyr, Nothing, and the Nightlights and what have you are not in the franchise for its beautiful and incredible message, but simply to be entertained. And true art, when it's good, doesn't merely entertain. It has a message and changes you, or at least makes you think. There's nothing wrong with wanting to just be entertained, but there's a very big difference between that and good art. And I love How to Train Your Dragon for its messaging and good art in addition to being entertained. Or rather, the entertainment is in addition to the good story and message. But I've said my piece. People want what they want. I just think it would be an absolute travesty to tarnish the good, wholesome, beautiful message and metaphors and all the symbolism of the trilogy and the other works by trying to just create more content for the sake of pleasing some fans, or worse, for money. And the only way you can make those supposed Nightlight names from a random phone app game official lore is by making more content, which I really don't think they should do. But again, if you love those names, you think they're adorable, and you want to refer to them as that, go ahead, who cares? I'm just saying don't call it lore or canon, because it's not for all the reasons I just said. And yes, like I said, I don't think they should have individual names, period. They should be just wild dragons, keeping that healthy separation. However, that said, I'm just hoping they don't find a way to make those names lore by making some cheap short with no meaning. And while I'd be somewhat open to maybe a short or a series taking place between the second and third film, which wouldn't include the Nightlights or Zephyr and Nothing, I'd rather they didn't. The franchise ended so perfectly with Hidden World. Leave it that way. So how many of you knew about the names, or even the game for that matter? I don't think many did. I personally wasn't a fan of the game, but I just don't really care for phone games in general. Let me know in the comment section your favorite species of How to Train Your Dragon dragons, outside of Furies though, because, I mean, obviously the Nightlights are going to be way up high for a lot of us. Mine personally is the Deadly Natter, but I think that's because of Stormfly. So I'm not sure. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video and maybe got some new information out of it. I talk about many other geeky subjects as well, so you can check out my other content here or anywhere on my channel, and maybe consider subscribing if you want to. But anyway, that's all for today. Thank you for watching.